right, it is Tuesday night, and we have another guest on the podcast for Goal Horns and Fight Songs. This time, it's a little bit different. Everybody is used to having us have Western Michigan hockey players, and I know we tweeted it out. But this time, we have Kirsten Krull. She,
Our first NHLer.
yeah, our first NHLer. That is very true. Went to school at St. Cloud State, was part of their broadcast team, is the co-host of the Bar Down Beauties podcast, and then also, at least most recently that I know, is intermission pregame and intermission host for the Minnesota Wild, and now doing freelance work as well, as you just announced.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. Honored to be a St. Cloud State alum on a Western Michigan focused podcast. So love that. But yeah, you guys pretty much summed it up really well. Went to St. Cloud State and was fortunate enough to be a part of their broadcast program. I spent 2 years as their rinkside reporter covering their men's and women's hockey team. So was super fortunate. That was truly like a life-changing opportunity for me and truly a dream come true, because that's all I ever wanted to do was report rinkside or sideline. So that was such an amazing experience. I co-host the Bar Down Beauties podcast with my friend Jesse Pierce, and then in-arena host for the Minnesota Wild. So you'll see me on the video board holding puppies.
And you know, even though you picked the wrong dog breed to cheer for, we're not going to hold it against you.
What's the right dog breed to cheer for?
A bulldog. Come on.
Oh no.
Yeah, I am the bulldog fan. Wes is the Bronco fan.
Who would have ever guessed that?
I will say I did ask Riley Tufte 2 summers ago, former UMD alum, asked him what his favorite dog breed was, expecting him to say a bulldog. That is not what he said. I think he said it was like a golden retriever or something.
That's why he's okay down in Dallas. It's fine. No. It's fine. All right. So now, as with every guest, we're going to get into our 1T warm-ups. I think I went first last week with Luke. So, Wes, it's on you.
All right. So as you mentioned, you were a rinkside reporter there for St. Cloud State. So you know that hockey interviews can be pretty stereotypical. What's your favorite stereotype answer that you've gotten?
Got to get pucks deep and bodies to the net. That's usually, I feel that's usually players go to, and you ask them what needs to happen moving forward. Like final period, you guys are down 1 goal, or you guys are ahead. What do you guys need to do to maintain that lead? Usually the most common answer I feel like I got way more than that is got to get pucks deep and bodies to the net. So if I had $1 for every time a player answered and said that,
you wouldn't be on with us. You'd be living a nice lifestyle.
I would be retired out on a beach somewhere. Yeah, I would not be here.
Now, I have seen the videos of you playing hockey, but if you were a hockey player, what would your goal song be? Your personalized goal song?
Ooh, that's a really hard question. I've more so said this would be my walk-up song in baseball, but I think this would apply really well to a goal song as well. Poor Everybody Else by Carrie Underwood. Very kind of like, it's pretty much a rock song. Very good. That's, I think, what I would choose it to be.
I mean, there's not a lot other than Nashville. There's not a lot of country, well, in baseball or hockey. So
I would change that. I love country music.
All right. A bingeable show you can watch over and over.
Ooh, my comfort shows. I love Friends, Big Bang Theory. I've been huge into How I Met Your Mother. Anything that I can just kind of put on in the background that makes me laugh. This isn't so much a show that I binge watch like on repeat, but it's a show when it comes out. Like I immediately binge watch Outer Banks.
Oh, I think I lost some money to Wes on that one. What is your favorite pizza topping?
See, I'm kind of boring. Um, so normally when I order pizza from like Domino's or something, I literally just do extra cheese. I love just a good cheese pizza with extra cheese. Otherwise, if I'm making my own pizza at home, just take out some pizza crust and throw it together myself. I usually throw on some green and red peppers, spinach, and broccoli.
Spinach
I know,
on
I knew
a
I was going to lose some people there, but I love to load up on my pizza just some veggies.
that is a new one. I don't think we'll ever duplicate that answer.
It's like
It's all good.
a farmhouse pizza is what I think this restaurant I went to first when I had it called it, and it was really good, and then I just started replicating it on my own at home. So makes you feel good about making a bad decision by eating pizza.
And then last one, what's a standout hockey memory for you?
Ooh, I feel like I'm fortunate to where I've had a few of them. Probably the most vivid one for me, just being a fan, was last year at the Winter Classic when the Minnesota Wild had it at Target Field against the St. Louis Blues. It was all my friends were going, and I was kind of on the fence because it was also like -30 outside. It was brutal weather, and we were right across the street. We were at this one bar. John Hamm was also there. He made a quick appearance. My friends were very upset they did not meet him, especially being same place, same time. But there was about 30 minutes till puck drop, and me and one of my friends were like, do we do it? And then we did it. We bought tickets. I had to run to my car quick to put on something that would somewhat keep me warmer than just the sweater dress I had on. I was still very underdressed. Accidentally was wearing St. Louis Blues colors, but we found a place to stay warm at Target Field, and just being able to be at the Winter Classic was an unreal experience and just kind of made even more memorable by how last minute it came to be.
All right, and then the last one for me. Who is your favorite athlete growing up?
Jason Witten from tight end of the Dallas Cowboys. He was my favorite. Just, I'm a huge character person. So if I feel like somebody's like a good person, good athlete, well-rounded, does good in the community, he just kind of embodied everything that I respected and what I think a person should be. And so he was somebody that I really came to know and love just from afar. And also, I was a Dallas Cowboys fan growing up. So he was probably my first favorite athlete ever.
Awesome. All right, so I know now we're gonna get a little more deep dive.
Okay.
You mentioned on social media the other day when you were doing the Vikings cheerleading hosting that you were the kid that was always upset when you didn't get called on for popcorn reading, and it is the career in communications, which is basically what you do. Is that something you always wanted to pursue, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, or did that come a little bit later in life that you wanted to be in front of people, public speaking, being that just communication industry, making everybody feel good, have a good time?
You know, I I knew I wanted to go into communications directly when I was in 7th grade. I had like a moment of enlightenment, if you will, based on a conversation with one of my really good middle school friends who had kind of brought the idea up to me. And ever since that it was presented to me, I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. So since 7th grade, that was kind of the path. I was like, this is what I'm going to go down. Growing up from a very early age, I've kind of, it's not so much that I knew that was the path I wanted to go, but there's just traits in myself I saw at an early age. I grew up, I was the middle child. So I was very much the stereotypical middle child who wanted to do everything I could to get attention, whether that be acting out or whatnot. Usually worked, sometimes for the worst. Sometimes I would act out and just get in trouble. But no, that very much was me. Just I had always loved interacting with other people. And I mean, kind of being in front of an audience was a thing that I had always, I mean, I feel like a lot of kids grow up and they're like, I want to be an actress. I want to be a singer. I want to do this. I was no exception. Like very early on, that's what I wanted to do. I've always, I think, had a very energetic personality. I was the kid that also on my report cards, like in elementary school, was getting comments like, she's great, but she's very social with her classmates. She talks too much. That was me. So I think you hear a lot of like that crossover with journalists in the field. So I think there's traits I could have picked up on early on that would make it seem like being somebody who's able to communicate with other people in a profession made sense for me.
That would be I know for some people it does take a while to learn, especially us even doing this. It does take a while to learn. So great that you were able to figure out on that. And maybe your parents weren't so excited to see the report card sometimes. Well,
Early
grades-wise,
on was great. Besides that comment, high school, not happy. I will.
all right, we
say.
won't go there. We won't go there.
So
Oh,
I was doing reading a couple of your blog posts to get ready for today, and you did, I remember that story coming from one of them, and you dove into football, and you end up at one of the premier hockey schools in the country. I think you said you were looking at some of the bigger football programs like Georgia, who also had a decent program. Did you become more of a hockey fan getting into St. Cloud and spending time around those guys, or would you still say you're more of a football fan?
I will say this. I did not come from a hockey family whatsoever. My family, not, I should say this. My dad was always super into sports. My mom, I think, is kind of a casual fan. Like if it's on, she loves to watch. She loves going to sporting events. But I started watching sports with my dad early on, like mid to late elementary school. And what he always liked watching was baseball, football, and NASCAR. So that's kind of the home that I grew up in. Those were the sports we were surrounded by. Hockey was not in the equation whatsoever. No one in my family watched hockey. I had some friends who played, so I was accustomed to going to some games growing up, but my knowledge and experience in the game was minimal. My junior year, I knew and decided I was going to go to St. Cloud State. I knew they had an excellent broadcast program, and that's what I wanted to do. And I knew hockey was the sport at St. Cloud State, and I would be so fortunate if I got to be any part of the program they had covering the hockey team. So what I started to do as a junior in high school was I was like, I know nothing about this game. I'm going to teach myself the game. So I started watching the Stanley Cup playoffs. The team I decided to follow when I turned it on, the Minnesota Wild, I don't think they were in the playoffs the year I started watching. If they were, they obviously weren't in it late in the game. I say that respectfully because I wish they would have been, but they weren't. So the team I was following was the Nashville Predators because they were still in when I decided to tune in and watch. So I followed them, taught myself the game, got to St. Cloud State, and you just become very immersed in hockey. You learn the game so quick being that involved with it. And once I knew the game, I absolutely loved it. I still love football, and it's a dream for me to work in football, like in the capacity of sideline reporting or just in any form. But hockey, I love the game, and I'm so happy that in the roundabout way that it got brought into my life.
Did you get to experience St. Cloud hockey as a fan, as a student in the student section at all, or were you straight into covering it in some capacity?
I was able to catch a few games as a fan. I think in my entire time being a student at St. Cloud, I maybe got to see maybe 5 games as a fan through my 5 years I spent at the university. I, as a freshman, tried to step foot on campus and get as involved as I could right away. And I was lucky that I had some great mentors that were happy to work with me early on. From, again, like I mentioned, the very first weekend I was on campus, brought me by the TV studio, brought me to football games. And so therefore I got to be part of the hockey broadcast because I made the connections early on, had some experience under my belt. And so therefore, because I was working the production, I didn't get to be a fan, but maybe 5 games total I saw as a student from the student section.
See, I'm from Western, so it's student section is everything here, and if you don't get to experience that at least once as a student here, you're really missing a large experience of the college hockey experience here.
Mm.
And I know Mike has said that their student section has kind of dwindled a little bit there in
Mhm.
Duluth, which is kind of unfortunate considering the career, the college hockey experience that they have there with back-to-back national championships in the last few years and just the product that NCHC produces.
Mm. I've heard all about the Lawson Lunatics. That was the one barn in college hockey that I think even most of the guys on the team were like, that was either their favorite to play in because of the atmosphere, or it was like the hardest to play in because of that student section. So anyone in the NCHC knows about the Western Michigan student section. But no, that is a shame to hear about UMD, especially winning like back-to-back national championships. You think that they would have more students in the section. But I will say St. Cloud State kind of went through that phase too. I mean, winning the Penrose Cup, the student section, it had dwindled since I stepped foot on a campus. This past year, just looking from pictures, it looked like they somehow found a resurgence. So I don't know what it is, but I think that's kind of in most college sports. They go through those ups and downs, more primarily college hockey as opposed to maybe football. But yeah, it would be nice to see all the students back in the arena for games.
I think UMD, I actually didn't even go to UMD. I went to St. Scholastica, but I would go with friends and we would sneak in, use for other friends' IDs and everything. But you would go on the UMD ticket exchange, Scholastica students as well. Hey, can I get into the student section? And then there were some issues with the student section with some chants and everything. And they got rid of the upper bowl and it's just the lower bowl. And even when I was there watching them play Western this year, I'm like, do kids just not care anymore? Or what's the deal with the student section now? And St. Cloud, I noticed it. I didn't go up there this year, but I went up there last year uh, to watch the first round of the playoffs. And student section wasn't great, but it also lands kind of spring break time. So you're like, yeah.
Spring break is super hard. I mean, any year, even my freshman year, when the student section, you were lucky to get in day of like waiting in line for an hour outside. You were lucky to get a spot. Spring break has always been a struggle because people are down in Florida, they're back home. So I think that's just more of a scheduling issue than anything.
Mm-hmm. So you answered this in a way, but your junior year, you knew you were going to St. Cloud, but you had already picked out your colleges. The broadcasting portion must have played heavily into where you were deciding to go and the program that St. Cloud had. How many other schools, even because I don't know this, how many other schools even have really good student broadcasting programs to let kids potentially pursue this career and see if this is something that they want to do in the future?
There's a handful. I think looking at it now, broadcasting programs around the country have grown more from when I was a junior in college or a junior in high school, excuse me, and looking. I based my entire search off of their journalism program, specifically sports journalism. So I knew Georgia had some sort of a program, but I more so was like college football, get me down to the SEC. I'm like, that's my dream. That's what I want to do, work in football, get me down there. But then I don't know what it was, but I was like, this doesn't feel right. ASU, they've got a great journalism program. That was one school I was looking at, not so seriously, but I was looking at it. Mizzou, I knew they had a journalism program that was accredited, so I was looking there for a little bit. And I wasn't looking at this school in particular, but I do know, especially as of late, they've got an exceptional journalism program, Syracuse. So if I were to be doing the college search now, that's probably a school that would have been on my radar, but was not at the time.
This is something that Wes and I have talked about as well, is we both have NCHC TV. We both have all the schools. We watch as much as we can. Of course, we're focusing on our schools, but you don't know what you're getting with each broadcast. St. Cloud is great. North Dakota is great. UMD, I think our cameras are from 1993, so like 2 years younger than I am. I mean, it's such a hodgepodge of all these different broadcasts. And one thing that we thought of during this last season was, well, St. Cloud has students and they're teaching them. Wouldn't it be a good idea for the NCHC just to say, hey, the local stations, they can have theirs, but for people like us, have a student run broadcast, just the NCHC TV is student run. And just your thoughts on that, which I'm assuming you think it's a good idea, but to get kids the experience, of course, having professors monitor and kind of make sure things don't start on fire, but just your thoughts on the NCHC doing that and expanding it to all 8 schools and potentially now 9 with Arizona State.
I mean, I think St. Cloud State is proof that it can be done and it can be done really, really well. You mentioned the other broadcast, and this isn't to put a knock against them, but the product St. Cloud State is able to put forth is top tier with what the professionals at Midco Sports with North Dakota are doing. So, and I will say some of the professionals like producers, hosts that are doing the Midco Sports Network broadcast for UND games, they're St. Cloud State alumni. So, I mean, if you give kids the opportunity and they have the passion, they'll be able to put forth an exceptional product. So I say just give kids the opportunity.
I don't wonder then too, it's you have Dave Starman, and I can't remember the play-by-play guy's name at North Dakota, but then Jim Rich, he'll come up, and then Gino Parrish doing St. Cloud games. I know the students do a lot of the work, but even the play-by-play, there are kids, I would love to do that myself, and I have done a little bit for high school, but you're bringing in these professionals and these known names. I just think it would be a lot more fun to have the students, and it's not going to be perfect. I would sign up for it knowing it might not be perfect every time, but it's giving kids the opportunity.
For sure. And with St. Cloud State, we do have, I mean, at the time when I was part of the broadcast, it was Mark Parrish, Pat Micheletti switching off to do color analysis with Jim Rich. Jim Rich has been kind of that anchor in the play-by-play spot and exceptional at what he does. And they're all great guys. With the exception of those group of the announcers, the rest are all students, and you could get them easily mixed up for professionals in the field. And the program itself has allowed for students to seamlessly transition into a job before they've even graduated. There's a number of kids who went to Fox Sports North, had contracts pending before they even graduated in their senior year. But it would be great to see students in that position as well. I mean, not to say professionals are the only answer in that spot. There are kids who could very easily, right out of college, go do play-by-play and color, just have that great presence, announcing voice to them. So again, it just goes forth to giving them an opportunity to showcase what they have.
And that's where I think, and Wes, you can chime in, that's where I think the NCHC TV would be a perfect place for them to do it, because I grew up on the Iron Range. We would get St. Cloud broadcasts on, I don't know, whatever channel it was, 22, so we could see that as well as the UMD broadcast. But just having that opportunity for the kids to, and now Mark Parrish, he's Bally Sports fame and everything, and Power Trip and all that. He's doing fine. But yeah, it would just be fun to see the kids do it and have their own network and just let them run with it.
Definitely. There'd be a lot of passion there for sure.
They could be the next executives of CBS or NBC or Fox or whatever for any sports if they really wanted to.
Yeah. Everyone gets their start somewhere.
And I think it would even up a lot of the broadcasts, like Michael said. I mean, Western doesn't even have we don't have a local channel that covers games. If we're not on NCHC TV, there's no way to watch it unless you're at the game. Otherwise, it's radio. Our audio feed for games, if you're watching on NCHC TV, is the radio. And Robin Hook does a great job. He's called Western Sports for who knows how long, and covers every Western sport. I mean, he's the voice for football, basketball, baseball, hockey, men's, women's. But it would be interesting to see if there was a way to incorporate more of a generalized coverage and do kind of make NCHC TV a student run network, almost like an NHL TV, or, you know, have shows that they can put on throughout the week or things like that. Like the ability to expand is almost endless in what you can do and the opportunity you can give students and internships and things of that nature. So to me, it would be an interesting thing to watch happen.
Definitely. And I mean, radio too, it's a different, radio is great. You get a very different picture listening to it, but radio play by play is very different than TV play by play. Just the descriptions, there's a different style to it. So if you don't have a TV play by play, why not fill that spot? And I'm not kind of on board for the free work train to where students should just be volunteering their time. I think they should get maybe not major compensation, but just something a little bit for their time, especially if they're putting in all the work to an entity that does receive profits from the product being produced. But there's so many kids who would just volunteer their time and do it for free just because they want to do it, because they're loving it and they want the opportunity. So there's definitely a group for it.
And that actually kind of leads into my next question pretty well. You doing the broadcasting part of it and the rink side reporting, I never know what to call that. But kids need to understand, Wes and I, we just do this for fun. We work 9-to-5 job. We do this on Tuesday nights. This is our extra, but you working different hours in all the different jobs that you have had, working at St. Cloud, did it prepare you for more that work-life balance once you entered your career, versus if Wes or I went to school, we did whatever, I went to tennis practice, we did that, and then all of a sudden we have no idea what we're doing. All of a sudden we're getting home at 11:30, midnight, depending on how far after a wild game, or if it's the playoffs, it's over, overtime, 5 overtimes, however long they go. Did that help you prepare to have that work-life balance, but also how much of it is a challenge, and how much were you prepared to have that, I guess, different one when you entered your career, going into college?
I will say work-life balance, it's something very important to me. And I think it should be something very important to everyone. I think it's something management for companies should really prioritize, because a job is not your entire life. And I think especially during COVID, when there was no sports happening, that was a very hard thing for me to face, because I made what I did my entire personality, my entire life. I had no idea who I was when sports weren't happening. And I think some people did come to that same thing. I was like, I didn't know what to do. And to be quite honest, like, it was a very depressing time for me, because I was like, who I thought I was is gone. I don't know what I am without. But I think that was something I really needed to go through, because it made me figure out who I am outside of it. And then because of that, it made me prioritize things outside of just sports so that I could try to find some work-life balance. Now, I have been in jobs that have really respected a work-life balance, people who have been very accommodating to that. I've been in jobs where that hasn't been respected, and it was kind of, why would you even think that's a thing? Getting phone calls like 1 a.m. from a boss. So it really depends where you're at. Again, some people will wholeheartedly agree there needs to be a balance, and other places will think you need to dedicate your life to the job. I will say my time at St. Cloud State, when I did the hockey broadcast, I got paid for doing that rinkside reporting. It wasn't much, but it was something. And there are a lot of times too, I donated a lot of my time just to get experience on my resume, to make a demo tape, to just try to get my name out there in any time. And I don't regret it. but also it was hard too, because I don't come from a family to where I was able to be financially supported and able to not work and do all of these extracurriculars. Some people are in that position, and that is great, and they are very fortunate. But realistically, there's a lot of people, the vast majority, who are not able to do that. And I think that's why I advocate so hard that people shouldn't really be giving up their time totally for free, depending what you're doing, unless you're voluntarily doing it going in. But early on, that was great for me when I had minimal responsibilities, and it really helped get that experience under my belt and give me the opportunities I have right now.
I do think I do think things have changed too, because I will fully admit it. I listen to the Power Trip morning show every single day, and every once in a while they talk about just interning for free, and that's not even a thing anymore, but they're just volunteering their time, and that's how they got their name, and now they're 23 years old or something like that as a show. um, so I do think there's some value in putting in that effort, but I also agree with you that they're college students. We were all college students, and you were unless you're playing a sport, and even if you're playing SEC football, yeah, you should get paid. D3 athlete, nah, I was just doing it because it was fun. But you're putting in that extra time. You're not being, in a sense, you have less time to be a college student and have that college experience, because you're trying to better your future and trying to get your name out there. So if you're doing that, might as well get paid for it at least a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, when I was ringside reporting, when I say I got paid a little bit, I got like $30 a game, but that was still something. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just so far removed from college and like so into the real world now of adulthood where I'm like, I could not function without getting compensated something for the time I put into the things that I do. Whereas in college, like all I really had to worry about paying was my rent for that month and have money for food. So I was very blessed that my responsibilities were a lot less at that time, that I was able to take on a lot more. But at the same time, like I think I'm advocating from the sense that there's a lot of people who aren't that fortunate to where they didn't get financial aid or a loan to even go to college. So they have to work 2 jobs outside of classes to pay what they owe for the semester for books and tuition, because that's the reality for some people. And I just think times have changed so much for where it was customary to do free internships with everything going on in the world we live in. It's too expensive to work for free. Like you can't live working for free.
Yeah, and there's especially the kids that they have their work study, but then like you said, 2 jobs. They might have 1 or 2 jobs outside of their work study that they're doing just in between classes for a couple hours. That's not enough. So I I definitely think it should be something for those kids, especially if the NCHC were to make it basically, like Wes said, an NHL network and move forward and have shows, different schools, different nights. You could do that now.
Mm-hmm. It'd be cool to see. No one knows their school better than the fans at that school. So
That is correct.
with the exception to, that's not a knock at all. And I want to make that clear to the CBS Sports Network, because Dave Starman, Shireen, they're all fantastic and great people. They really do the work to know their stuff. So they do an exceptional job. And honestly, it's a privilege to get to watch NCHC on CBS. That's not a knock towards them at all.
Oh, and we were very upset when Starman was not part of the NCAA, the Frozen Four coverage this year.
A lot of people were.
That he's fantastic.
He's earned the respect of people watching the game. He does do exactly that. They put in the time and effort to know and understand the schools and the players, and have tidbits throughout the game that you wouldn't get from a different broadcast. And what they bring to the NCHC and college sports in general is something that would be missed out on if they weren't around. So kudos to them and the effort they put in and what they contribute for sure. But I do want to ask you real quick about the COVID season. I think you might have missed it, or it was your last year. So you kind of missed out on the first half of the season there in 2020 when it started in the pod in Omaha. But what was that like, having to essentially fulfill the same responsibilities, but there's nobody there that second half of the season?
So I was actually very fortunate when, I mean, it depends which way you want to look at fortunate, because I did have to miss out on a lot, but in a way, I was able to do mostly everything. So I stayed for 5 years. 2020 was my last year. So I graduated that spring semester. And so right when St. Cloud played their last home game, I don't remember if it was like last playoff home game
It would
where
have been
they
the
had
regular
home
season,
ice for the, yeah, I think it
because
was.
they were supposed to come to Western when they canceled the season.
Okay, so it was the last home game regular season then. I think we were in the position to where we maybe would have home ice to go into the Frozen Face-Off. It was just before Frozen Face-Off was supposed to happen at XL Energy Center. So I kind of felt like I had that closure working my last home game, because home ice, I think, was very up in the air for playoffs where we were. And then the news came, season was canceled. So it was really upsetting because St. Cloud, they had the chance to make another run at it, if I'm remembering correctly. Bummed Frozen Face Off was also canceled because I was going to go to that and potentially do some stuff at it. And it just kind of sucks, all in all, that things had to end the way that they did. You didn't get to go out on the note you wanted, especially with graduation. But in my case, I was very fortunate. I felt like I was able to kind of close that chapter working what we had known to be the last broadcast.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I think UMD would have three-peated that year for the national championship, but that's beside the point.
did you do anything with the Wild during that year? Because I just wonder what the atmosphere was like, knowing that there weren't going to be fans around, and to still have to fulfill those broadcasting professional responsibilities.
Yeah, so I did do the Wild that year.
Okay.
It was kind of, a lot of people don't know this story, but so they started contacting me, I believe, in January, that spring semester of my final year at school. And so in February, I was going in to work my first game in arena hosting. It was like a live audition. I was so scared. I had no idea what I mean, I had an idea of what I was doing, but it was terrifying because I had never spoken in front of nearly 20,000 people before. And it was just very nerve wracking, especially as a college kid. I had imposter syndrome to the max. But whatever I did right, they were impressed by it. And so they wanted me to come back and work some games the remainder of that season. The game I was supposed to come back and work for the Wild was the exact day the season shut down, to where they're like, this game is canceled, or postponed at the time when it was, season put on pause. And it was a hard time too, because I was interviewing for a position with the Wild at the time that was put on standstill, and I didn't actually hear back from the Wild. Well, we had been like briefly in communication throughout, but it wasn't until October, late 2020, to where they were like, hey, we can hire you on, we still want you, we'll send you all the information. To which I was ecstatic, because it was like in all of the mess, that was like my highlight, getting to do that. So it wasn't until I think February of 2021 they were able to have maybe 250 people total, including the media, in the entire arena. They had me come in to just do in arena hosting in front of an essentially very empty arena. It was very awkward and I was very timid. Especially, I do better talking in front of 20,000 people than I do in front of maybe 300. Like, it was so nerve-wracking because in an empty arena where there's nothing going on, it just kind of felt like all the pressure was on you. I don't know how many people actually listened to me during that time, but it was interesting, to say the least. It's not an experience I would want to do again. I hope we don't have another pandemic that causes us to shut down the way that we did. But it was an experience, to say the least, that I was fortunate enough to have a job through. So,
And that had to have been, for lack of a better word right now, a little bit trippy, because when you are in the arena and it's full, maybe 5,000-6,000 people will get up, but there's still a lot of people in the seats. With that few people, even going in a high school gym and speaking on a microphone, hearing your voice, that you kind of stop for a second. And so going to 250 people in an arena that big, that had to have been a weird feeling to just hear yourself basically echoing off the rafters and everything.
Yeah, it was for sure. And I mean, sometimes I still struggle kind of with a little bit of a delay when I'm speaking in the arena at games. Sometimes there's a bit more of a delay than other days, and that throws me off a little bit. I've gotten better at being able to just tune it out and focus on the words coming out of my mouth. But when there was 250 people there, you really could hear the delay, and it was kind of like, right, we're going to try to block that out the best we can and focus on the next word coming out of our mouth and try to not stutter. But it's hard. It is hard.
Well, I've been to 2 games in the last 2 years. You've done a great job. So
Thank you.
I have not noticed any effects on that.
Thank you.
I don't know, Wes, do you have any more? Because I have at least one more.
No, other than I do have one comment, and then I'll throw it back to you. You did mention that like you suffered a little bit of depression when sports were put on pause for that period, and Mike knows this. I've told Mike this like a million times, and I've told a few guests. Like, I have PTSD from a childhood event, and because of that, I had a real hard time making connections with kids my own age or people my own age. And it wasn't until I got into hockey and watching hockey and following hockey that I've been able to make connections easier. So like when that sports were shut down, it was, if I hadn't had my family that I have now, it would have probably been a much more difficult thing to get through, because sports plays such a huge part in how I manage my relationships with people. And it's literally how Mike and I met. We were running a meme page on Facebook, and just so happened to turn out that we both followed college hockey teams. And Mike's one of the few people that I still talk to from that page.
Yeah, and I was dumb enough. We went down. Western Michigan was supposed to play Northeastern at Bridgestone Arena. We went down there. Bridgestone had a water main break because we were going to go to the NHL game during the day and watch the college game at night. But I flew out to Grand Rapids, Michigan. We drove down to Nashville, watched the game at their practice arena, went to Chicago, ended up watching an AHL game, and then I flew back that weekend. It was rough, but it is amazing how powerful sports can be to a lot of people, whether it's like you said with your identity, with everything that you were doing, you didn't quite know who you really thought you were, or Wes, his way to connect to the world. Yeah, it's a silly game in a sense, but it means so much to so many people. It's like music. It means something different to everyone.
Definitely. First, I want to say, Wes, thank you for sharing that, because I had no idea, and I feel like maybe other people listening didn't either. And I think there's a lot of power in being vulnerable is something that I live by. So thank you for opening up and sharing that. But yeah, sports do take up a huge identity that people take on. And I look back on the days of the pandemic, and like, if I were to go back and do it again now, I would spend my time so much differently than I did. You hear stories of people that are like, I wrote a book during this time, or I was so productive, I did all of this stuff. And I was like, I sat there like taking naps all day, just feeling sorry for myself. So I was like, if I could go back and do it again, I would do it so differently and spend my time and actually make use of just being able to be home and having time to do something productive.
I think this came out of the pandemic, because we were stuck watching NCHC TV. Everything was in the pod in Omaha, or we couldn't get to games. I think North Dakota was the only spot that had fans that year for the playoffs, and maybe the last home game. But it was just me and Mike BSing on Facebook chat or whatever, and Xbox, and decided, screw it, we'll talk about it, because Even if no one listens to it, at least we're doing something.
And we even thought about it. We were like, we're gonna talk about it anyway, so might as well throw it out there, see what happens. And we've made some pretty cool connections through this already, and making more, especially having you on. All right, now that we have that seriousness out of the way, with all the jobs that you've had, what has been the most fun part for you that you've done? And I know when the little kids play at the X, those interviews, that has to be one of the highlights because those are always fantastic because you don't know what they're going to say.
Yeah. Also a little nerve wracking not knowing what they're going to say too. No, I love the Might interviews. I told my boss this past year, I was like, there are 3 things I am demanding you give me for reads. One of them is kind of an inside joke, a quick little advertisement we do at Whistles. But the others were anytime there's an adoptable dog, I want to hold it. I don't even want to hold it. I need to hold it. So that's mine. Another thing I need to do is the Might interview. So those were my demands. I was like, you need to give those to me. And my co-host is like, you take them because I don't want them. So it worked out perfect. That's why we made such a good team. But I will say getting to work anytime I get to work the Stanley Cup playoffs for the Wild has been such a blessing, and it's been such an unreal experience. I mean, there's certain energy throughout the season, such as like opening night for the regular season or just certain games, but the emotion and the energy felt during playoff games is so different. So I've been very fortunate. I've gotten to work 3 Stanley Cup playoffs for the Wild. That is very much a memory I don't take for granted. Some other times I'm trying to think of specific games, but there's a number of St. Cloud State games, just even the entire experience of getting to stand on the bench, interview the players, be right there where all the action is. Cause that's all I ever wanted to do is be right there reporting. And I got to do that. That truly was my favorite job that I ever had, was getting to ringside report at St. Cloud State. And so there's a number of games that went into overtime, double overtime against Duluth. St. Cloud came out on top. I forget if it was.
Well, they're not going to talk about this if it.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about it. But that was a really cool experience to be a part of. Anytime North Dakota would come to St. Cloud State, just standing room only filling the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center. Whenever the Minnesota Gophers would come, there's just a number of games and experiences that just kind of give you chills being there in that moment that I have memories saved of that I'm never going to forget.
And it is really cool that you get to watch and work, but watch the Stanley Cup playoff games, because I think I've missed one since 2013 that the Wild have been in. And I think that was last year's playoffs. I've even driven to St. Louis to watch a game because you can't beat that energy. It's so much fun to be there. And the fact that I might get one, and if they ever get out of the first round, you get to work every home game until they bring the cup home. And that would be just amazing.
Yeah, that's the hope. So let's get the Wild to bring home a cup. That's the dream.
I do want to address the fact, though, that your co-host did not want to hang out with the adoptable dogs. I almost stole my fur niece and nephew for this just so I could show off how handsome Briz is, who is named after Ilya Brizgalov, and then Ahsoka, and how pretty she is. I was like, I just might do it. I didn't, but I know you're a dog person, so I was like,
Well, I will point this out. He does like dogs. He owns his own dog too. So like he has a dog. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was like they get heavy. I don't know why he doesn't like doing it at games. I don't know if it's because he worries that they like pee on him or what. There was something there to where like he'll do it, but it's not his favorite thing.
maybe he's just worried that he's going to end up going home with that dog and adopting it instead.
That's the joke with me, because I'm always like, I need to bring this dog home. Like Bodhi wants a friend, and then everyone's like, Kirsten, no, like
Don't
no.
don't end up like one of my friends and her husband. They have 6 dogs and 2 cats.
I'm good on the cats because I don't like litter boxes, especially in the house. But dogs, owning 6 dogs is my dream. So I have got my pup right here next to me, laying on the floor, keeping me company while I record this podcast. He wants to be the only child. Like he soaks up all the attention. He does not want it any other way. He does not want a friend.
Well, and they all have their own personalities. Briz is like that too. He is the king of the castle. Ahsoka's just happy to be here.
Love that.
I don't think I have anything else. I know you just announced, Wes, you don't have anything?
No, we're good to
So
wrap up.
you just announced your freelance stuff. For anybody who stumbles across this, you can give out your information and what you're doing with your freelance, and are you coming back with the Wild next season as well?
That's the hope. If they bring me back, I'm fortunate. I would be so fortunate. I'd love to come back again for a 4th year. So let's manifest. They're gonna be like, we liked having Kirsten around. She did great handling the dogs. So let's manifest that so I can hold more dogs during the 2023-24 season. Um, no, so I knew for a long time I had wanted to go the freelance route, but I was very hesitant for the longest time to just put it out there. I got very, I'm going to be honest, I got very in my own head and kind of doubted myself for this past year and what I'm able to do. And it wasn't until like a lot of self work over the last few months, especially being fortunate enough to be given some opportunities to work some really cool freelance events, such as Minnesota Vikings cheer tryouts, that I was like, all right, I'm getting these opportunities just kind of passively. What's going to happen now if I don't necessarily feel fully ready, but if I kind of make the jump and put it out there, what can come my way? So it's been just about a week since I've formally been like, hey, I'm doing the freelance route. If you're looking for a host or reporter for sporting event, entertainment event, let me know. You can send me an email, Kirsten and Krull at gmail.com. It would probably be helpful if I knew my own email. Social media, Twitter at Kirsten Krull, at Kirsten and Krull on Instagram. But yeah, very excited. It's nerve wracking. I have no idea what's in store. I have no idea if this is going to be a successful venture for me or what path it's going to lead me down. But that's part of the fun of it, not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. So just putting the best energy out there and hoping it comes back to me.
And I would encourage anybody who listens to this to check out your website and check out your blogs, because Wes and I both, we were checking those out today, and they are very well done. They're very interesting, and you had talked about being vulnerable, just getting to know you as the person a little bit through your writing. But they are very well done with everything that you're sharing. So anybody who's listening, please go check those out as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you ever end up finding yourself in Kalamazoo during hockey season and you want to hit up a Western game, let me know. I'm an interesting sit by for sure. Most of the people in the arena know who I am.
It's on my list. It genuinely going to Kalamazoo is on my list, so I hope I can make it out to a game sooner than later.
Mike has experienced the joy that is sitting next to me at a game.
You will know who he is because he paints his face for every game. And the reactions from some of the players when I was asked them, what was your first reaction to seeing Wes? I think Trevor Gorsuch, who plays for Wichita in the ECHL, he said, I was skating around, I see this guy, and I go, holy shit. So we've scared, Wes has scared Trevor a few times, so you'll be able to pick him out if you ever make it out there.
Love it. That's what you want from players, is that kind of reaction. So that's great.
All right. So last thing is make sure you check out everywhere that Kristen's at. Bar Down Beauties podcast here on YouTube, I believe, is one spot they can catch it. Anywhere else they can find it?
Bar Down Beauties, you can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. So Spotify, Apple, watch the videos on YouTube. You can follow us on all social media. So we're kind of everywhere.
Perfect. We're YouTube only because I'm lazy and I'm the only one who does the back end stuff here. So other than that,
I did one thing.
That's true. You are Mike's first guest get. So he's 1 for 1 and hitting it out of the park. Other than that, there's only one thing left to say, and that's Pucks on Net, good things happen, like goal horns and fight songs. Until the next one, we're out of here. Have a good one.